Shades all day fishing. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Today's video, I'm going to be showing the top 5 baits that I'd be throwing from the bank. Pretty much guarantee that you're going to catch fish in any pond. Now, what I like about these 5 baits, they are self-working, which means anybody can throw them. In fact, if you're a novice, they're almost better for you. They're beginner baits. They can be thrown on basic equipment. You can use spinning rod, you can use a casting setup. Basically, as long as you've got a fishing rod that's got a reel, a rod, and 10 to 15 pound test line, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be able to fish all these baits. They're gonna give you the maximum amount of diversity for minimum investment. So again, when you're getting into fishing, especially if you've got a family, all of these things can cost a lot of money. There's nothing worse than investing in all the equipment, getting out to the lake, getting skunked, having the kids or whoever you brought out fishing to turn them on to the sport get absolutely disengaged. Now, a few tips for that: you make sure when somebody catches a fish, you make it a big deal. Please teach them to treat the fish with care, release them nicely, don't ever litter. But again, enough preaching. Again, what else I like about these baits is I'm gonna give you baits that are gonna allow you to fish all the conditions you're gonna find when you walk up to the pond. So when you first get to a pond or you're doing any bank fishing, you're gonna have limited access to what you can get. So you're gonna need something for top water, you're gonna need a search bait to kind of fan out to see where the fish are, and then you're gonna need something to slow it down and target them a little bit. So I'll give you right away what I start with. The very first bait that I'm gonna look at today is a small presentation hollow-bodied frog. The reason why I'm selecting this bait is because it's small in profile, it's very weedless, and again, you're going to find a theme with all of these baits today. They're going to be baits that are less likely to get hung up and caught, because when you're bank angling and you get snagged, chances are you're going to lose that bait. So this topwater frog is small in profile, still going to allow you to throw it on that light line and that light setup that I talked about. You're going to fish this on the top, you're going to walk it slowly, you're going to twitch it, you're going to pause. You're going to see if there's any action on the top water. If you do get bit on this, you're in for the ride of your life. Top water bites are probably one of the best bass bites you can get. When you get it, it's going to grab the bait. You're going to want to wait 1 or 2 seconds and then just set the hook to the side as hard as you can. This little bait is dynamite, especially in the evening or in the morning. But basically, when the bass have chased all the little bait fish to the shores, that's when you're going to want to throw this. It doesn't necessarily have to be around lily pads and a bunch of muck. But again, when you're throwing a frog, give it a little bit of time. If you don't have success with it, you can put it away, but try it again the other day. You're always going to want to come back to this, and you should always have some sort of hollow-bodied bait in your box. If it's not a frog, it can be a rat. They've got the spiders now, there's the Trd Bug, like there's a lot of options. I'm gonna go with a frog, especially in the pond, because it is the most common. When you're looking for a frog, you either want a light belly or a dark belly. For me, I always go with realistic colors. I want realism, I'm trying to match the surroundings. The bank, a hollow-bodied frog. Now, after I've gone and done some topwater fishing, I've either established whether it's a good bite or not, I'm going to move on. The next thing you're going to want to do when you're standing on the bank is you're going to want to locate the fish. So you're going to do that by throwing out some sort of search presentation. Now, you've got options. Some people will throw chatterbait, some people will throw swim bait, you can throw a jig. Now, because you're bank angling, because you don't want to get snagged, my number 2 bait from fishing from the bank is the good old spinnerbait. Now, over the years, these might not be as sexy as they used to be, but these things have been catching fish for a long time, and they're going to continue to catch fish for a long time. Now, when you're looking at a spinnerbait generally will have 1 or 2 little blades. These are going to shimmer in the water. They're going to try to mimic a school of bait fish. They're going to have a nice tail. They're going to have a little hook on them. You can fish them by themselves, or you can put a trailer on them to give them a different presentation. But what I like about these, they're going to come through grass really, really well. The top metal bar on this spinnerbait is going to act like a weed guard. So as you're pulling it through the water, it's going to be really hard to get this thing caught up. Now, one of the things I like about a spinnerbait, everything bites it. You can take this to the pond and you can get bit on a bluegill. You're gonna catch some sunfish on this. You're gonna get little perch, crappies, you're gonna get bass. You can get pike, pickerel. Everything will chase a spinnerbait. So having this one in your tackle box is gonna add versatility. It's gonna keep your options weedless. And this is gonna be an excellent selection for your search bait. So my number 2 bank bait is gonna be the spinnerbait. My third bait that I'm gonna fish from the bank is the good old Finesse Swim Jig. Now what I like about this, it's got a narrow head. This is gonna allow it to come through cover really effectively. It's gonna split grass, it's gonna go through the weeds. This thing is not gonna get caught up on a lot of things. You can fish it by itself, but more than likely you wanna put a little trailer on it. And one of the things I really like about this is the versatility it has. So if I wanna cast this out, I wanna retrieve it back, I can just swim it straight back, just a straight retrieve. If I wanna slow it down a little bit, I can kind of hop it on the bottom, keep contact, fish it just like a jig. I could also do a combination where I'm almost yo-yoing it. Just big hops, letting it come down. Big hops, letting it come down. I throw different trailers on it, I get different presentations. You might throw a big craw on it if you want a lot of action. You might want to put the end of a little worm on the end of it if you want something a little more subtle. It's a versatile bait. You can use it as a search bait. You can fish it near standing structure and targeted structure. This is definitely going to be the third bait that I'm going to throw from the bank. Before I get into my last 2 baits, in this box I'm going to have 3 baits, 2 types of plastic, and again 2 types of hooks. I'm going to bring a mushroom style jig head. This is going to be for my Ned bait presentations. And I'm also going to be packing a 3 or 4/0 EWG, so extra wide gap hook. I want thin wire because again, I don't expect that you're going to be fishing on the big heavy braids or the heavy wire. This is just a small trip to a pond. So a nice little light wire hook is all you're going to need to penetrate the fish's mouth. Now that I've explained the hooks, I'm going to get to the 2 last baits that I think everybody should be throwing from the bank. Alright guys, the number 4 bait that I'm going to be throwing from the bank is going to be the Texas Rig Stick Worm. The reason why I just showed you hooks that I'm going to bring is because they're versatile. As your bait selection increases, you're going to find that an extra wide gap hook is going to be used on so many of them. So in this case, when I'm only being able to select one, I'm going to take the stick bait. And the reason why is, by itself, this thing is a fish catching machine. It is going to catch fish all day long in almost any place that you go in all conditions. You're just going to have to find the right color. Now, what I like about this, again, it is very, very easy to fish. You cast it out there, you're going to let it drop. Once it drops, you're going to fish this very slowly. Just pull it in a little bit, let it sit. Pop it, twitch it a couple times, let it move. But as this sits here, when the fish finally comes and picks it up, you're going to feel a little tap. You want to wait a couple seconds, and then you want to set your hook really, really hard. As the mouth comes down, the soft plastic's going to compress on the hook. Again, the point's going to pierce hopefully the roof of its mouth. You start reeling in, keep tension on the line at all times, you're going to pull yourself in a fish. Now guys, if you don't want to have a stick worm and you wanted to make a substitution for keeping it minimized, you could take a floating finesse worm. Again, in a lot of applications I prefer this. In some applications I'll prefer the stick bait. One of the cool things about a finesse worm that I like is you can fish this by itself. So just straight up, tie a line to it, Texas rig, drag it across the bottom. Now because it is a floating worm, it's not going to lie truly flat, but this hook's heavy enough that it's going to sit like that in the water column, and you're going to be able to catch fish with it. Because of the shape of the tail and the fact that it's got good buoyancy, you can bite this in half. You could use it as a trailer for your spinnerbait. You could use it for a trailer for your swim bait. You could bite this worm in half, put it on a tiny little jig head, and you've got a Ned Rig. So for one worm, one investment, one cost, you get several kinds of applications. And to me, I think that's good dollar value. And they're all effective ways to catch fish. So for me, whether you're going to take a stick bait or a finesse worm, My number 4 bait from fishing from the bank is gonna be a plastic worm. All right, guys, that brings me down to the 5th and final bait that I'm gonna be throwing from the bank, and it's probably my favorite. Now, I'm gonna be throwing, I just talked about it, I'm gonna be throwing the Ned Rig. The Ned Rig is just a little mushroom style jig head, very light, that you put a small plastic on. Preferably something that is buoyant, something that'll float. If I only have one to choose from, I'm probably going to take something from the Z-Man Plastics, just because their Elastec, it's just crazy. It will always bounce, it will stand any jig straight up, and these will flat out catch fish. Up in Canada, if you're fishing a little Ned Rig near any rock pile, the smallmouth bass that are going to school up are going to hit this one after another. You're going to get your limit in hours. This is a fantastic little bait, ultra effective. Now, because we selected the jig head that's got the weed guard, this is going to allow you to throw it from the bank without the risk of getting caught up quite as often as you would. Now, in saying that, you're still going to get snagged a little bit with it, but you're not wanting to throw this really, really far. You know, I'm pitching this out 5 to 10 feet, I'm bringing it back. This, in some cases, will go deeper, then it will go farther. If I only had one soft plastic to choose, Z-Man Trd Bugs, and the reason why, the same versatility as I was talking about with the Finesse Swim. I can fish this by itself as a Ned bait, and it is just going to be outstanding. I can also take this tiny little bait, and it is a perfect trailer size for the small spinnerbait that I'm going to be throwing. It's also going to make a really great trailer for the finesse jig that you're going to be throwing. And the reason why is it's slightly bigger, so it's giving you a nicer profile. It's got those appendages on the end that when you put it on the back of the jig, it's going to flap just like a real fish's tail, and that's going to get your reaction strikes. That's going to agitate and move a lot of water, and you're going to get bit on. So when you're talking soft plastics, the other one when it comes to Ned Rig, the most famous Ned Rig bait of all time, I think, has got to be the Z-Man TRD. TRD standing for the real deal. Now everybody affectionately refers to them as the turds, but it is very simply just a piece of an old stick bait cut down to about 2.5 inches on that little hook. But because again it's made of the Z-Man plastic, this thing is going to float, this thing is going to stand up, and this thing is going to catch fish. Alright guys, so to sum it up, when you're throwing from the bank, you want the top 5 most effective baits that you're going to be able to throw, you're going to be able to catch fish, and you're not going to get caught up with. Again, my number 1 is the hollow-bodied frog. My number 2, search bait extraordinaire, is the spinnerbait. The 3rd bait I'm going to take for its versatility is going to be the Finesse Swim Jig. It's going to be a search bait, plus I can hop it along the bottom. Okay guys, the number 4 bait that I'm going to choose, it was the plastic worm. Again, you can either have it in the stick bait Senko style, or you can have it in a floating finesse worm. There's pros and cons for both. They're both versatile, both are going to catch you fish. And my 5th and final bait from throwing from the bank, you got to have a Ned Rig. Whether you're throwing the TRD traditional style, or you're throwing a small creature bait style, as long as you've got that mushroom head, the weedless hook, and something that floats, this bait is going to catch you a ton of fish. It's almost going to guarantee that you're going to go home without a skunk. If you've got some little ones with you or anyone who you brought fishing, you're going to catch a fish, you're going to make a big deal, they're going to have a good day. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. Please leave me a comment, subscribe, like, all the things that are interactive with the channel. And again, it's not about catching fish, it's about landing memories.